waiting.
I need you to picture this. A studio executive sits down to watch a rough cut of the movie they just spent $60 million on. They haven't seen most of it yet. They stopped watching the daily footage weeks earlier because everything looked fine. Now they're in a room full of test audience members, watching the finished cut for the first time, together. And what's on screen is a spaceship crew tearing their own eyes out, turning on each other, dying in what the director later called a blood orgy. Someone in that audience reportedly faints. Actually faints. Paramount did not get the movie they thought they were making, and over the next few weeks, they forced the director to cut over 30 minutes out of it, footage that has never been seen since. Footage now considered straight-up lost media. That movie is Event Horizon, a film many of you folks have seen years ago, and this is the story of how a studio built something genuinely too disturbing for its own test screening, panicked and gutted it in a matter of weeks, and by accident created one of the most enduring cult classics in sci-fi horror. Here's what Event Horizon is actually about, if you haven't seen it or it's been a minute. It's the year 2047. A rescue ship called the Lewis and Clark is sent to investigate the sudden reappearance of the Event Horizon, an experimental vessel that vanished 7 years earlier on its maiden voyage to Proxima Centauri. The Event Horizon was built around an experimental gravity drive designed to fold space itself, letting it travel faster than light. Nobody's heard a word from it in 7 years. Then it just reappears, drifting in orbit around Neptune. The rescue crew boards expecting a technical mystery to solve. What they find instead is a ship that seems to have a will of its own, and whatever it dragged back with it from wherever it went is not something any of them are prepared for. Sam Neill plays the ship's designer, who starts behaving less like a scientist and more like a man being slowly taken over by something. Lawrence Fishburne plays the rescue captain trying to hold his crew together as reality itself starts coming apart around them. The core idea underneath all of it is simple and genuinely unsettling. What if a shortcut through space accidentally opened a door into something like hell? Paul W.S. Anderson wasn't even supposed to be making a horror movie. He'd just come off Mortal Kombat in 1995, a genuine commercial hit, and Hollywood was throwing offers at him, including the Mortal Kombat sequel, and a very early shot at what would eventually become X-Men. He turned both down. What he wanted was an R-rated horror film, something with real teeth, after making a PG-13 movie. He also had an unusual window open in his schedule. He'd been lined up for a different action film that needed its lead actor to spend a year bulking up, which left Anderson free in the meantime. Paramount handed him a spec script by Philip Eisner that had been sitting in development. In its original form, it was basically a monster movie. The crew comes back from wherever they went with something hunting them, alien style. Anderson didn't want that story. He wanted a haunted house, set in space, closer to a ghost story than a creature feature, where the ship itself is the thing you're afraid of. He got a $60 million budget and creative control to rebuild the script from the ground up. On paper, this is a director getting a real shot at something genuinely ambitious. During production, the schedule fell apart. Anderson shot largely at Pinewood Studios in the UK, building the ship's interiors on the legendary 007 stage. Mid-production, a soundstage actually caught fire, an out-of-control blaze that set the shoot back further. But the real problem was timing. Paramount had been counting on a different film to anchor their summer slate that year, James Cameron's Titanic. When Titanic's release date slipped to the December, Paramount suddenly had a hole in their August calendar, and they decided Event Horizon was going to fill it. A standard editing period, guaranteed under Directors Guild rules, runs about 10 weeks. Anderson got 6. Then, because he still had second unit photography left to shoot himself, that 6 weeks effectively collapsed to around 4. Normally you get an entire quarter to build a first cut. He got only just a single month for the same cut. Here's the part that makes this genuinely wild. While the film was shooting, Paramount had been watching daily footage to track progress. At some point, they just stopped, everything looked fine, so nobody felt the need to keep watching. What they didn't realize is that the footage still to come was where things got extreme, the crew's descent into a shared hallucination of what happened to the ship's original crew, all of it visually inspired by painters like Hieronymus Bosch. Self-mutilation, bodies torn apart and eyes gouged out. So when Anderson finally screened his first assembled cut, running around 2 hours and 10 minutes, it wasn't just the test audience seeing this material for the first time. It was Paramount too, sitting in that same room, blindsided, reacting alongside a crowd that was not reacting well. Reports from that screening describe a genuinely shaken room, with one audience member reportedly fainting. Anderson has since said you really can't overstate how shocked people were. The studio, who'd been expecting something closer to their Star Trek-adjacent Sci-Fi brand, felt like the film had gone somewhere they never signed off on. So they made a call: cut it down hard. Anderson ended up trimming more than 30 minutes to bring the film to its theatrical 96-minute runtime. What got removed wasn't filler, it was some of the most intense material in the movie. Extended versions of the crew's hallucinated deaths. A vision sequence involving a character's injured son that was originally far more graphic than what made the final cut. Entire stretches of body horror that Anderson has described as closer to a full nightmare sequence than anything left in the finished film. And here's where it gets genuinely strange. Years later, when Paramount wanted to build a special edition DVD and possibly a director's cut, they went looking for that missing footage. It was gone, reportedly discarded and stored, through some odd film industry logistics, in a salt mine in Transylvania, where reels are sometimes kept because the environment stays dry and stable. When it was finally tracked down, it had deteriorated too badly to use for anything beyond a handful of rough, editor-marked clips that showed up on a 2006 DVD release. Even stranger, at a 2012 convention appearance, Anderson revealed that producer Lloyd Levin had actually located a VHS copy of the original cut. As of his most recent comments on it, nobody has watched that tape. It's still out there. A 2021 Blu-ray restoration attempt went looking for anything usable and came up with nothing new. The uncut version of Event Horizon may not exist as watchable footage anywhere on Earth. Worth pausing on why this movie feels the way it does, even gutted. Cinematographer Adrian Biddle shot it with a heavy, oppressive style that makes every corridor on the ship feel like it's closing in on you. Composer Michael Kamen scored it, but Anderson, a fan of blending genres, brought in the electronic duo Orbital to layer in synthesized, unsettling textures underneath the orchestral score. That combination is a big part of why the film feels unlike a standard studio horror movie even in its trimmed form. The production design and practical effects team leaned hard into physical, tactile gore rather than early CGI, which is a big reason the imagery still holds up nearly 30 years later, instead of looking dated. Event Horizon opened in the US on August 15, 1997, a week ahead of its UK release. It made about $26.6 million domestically, and landed somewhere in the low $40 million worldwide, against that $60 million budget. That's a straightforward box office failure. Critics were split, and not in the film's favor. It still sits in the high 20% range on Rotten Tomatoes, with plenty of contemporary reviews calling it derivative and messy. And there's a genuinely cruel irony sitting underneath all of it. Remember why Paramount rushed the schedule in the first place? Because they needed a hit to fill the gap left by Titanic's delay. Titanic came out that December and became the highest-grossing film in history at the time. The movie that got compressed and gutted to cover for a scheduling problem got steamrolled anyway, by the exact film that caused the problem. But home video told a different story. Event Horizon found an audience on VHS and then DVD that the theatrical run never got close to. Fans discovered a film that blends the claustrophobic dread of Alien with the dimension-hopping horror of Hellraiser, and something closer to pure psychological horror underneath both. Over the years, its reputation flipped almost entirely. It's now regularly cited on lists of the best horror films ever made. The influence shows up directly in later horror media. Dead Space creator Glenn Schofield has named Event Horizon as one of his biggest direct inspirations for that game's atmosphere and the design of its haunted ship. And the story isn't finished. As of 2025 and into 2026, IDW Publishing has been rolling out comic book prequel and sequel series expanding the Event Horizon universe. Almost 30 years after a rushed test screening nearly buried this movie for good, people are still building new stories inside it. Here's my honest take. Event Horizon isn't a perfect movie. The pacing stumbles in places, a couple of character arcs feel thin, and you can feel the seams where 30 minutes got carved out under pressure. But I think that's part of why it stuck around. It's a film that was genuinely too much for the room it was shown in, and instead of getting softened into something safe, it got hacked at, buried in an August release, and left to die. And it refused to. That's rarer than people think. Most movies that get gutted by a studio just quietly disappear. This one clawed its way into becoming one of the most influential horror movies of its decade, missing footage and all. So here's my question for you. If that lost VHS tape ever actually surfaced, would you want to see the version that made a studio executive faint? Or is the mystery part of it what makes this movie work? Tell me in the comments, I read everyone. If you're new here, subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like. There's a lot of deep dives coming your way. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.